A 5-year-long fight over the right of hundreds of thousands of people to control their own hairstyles has finally ended in victory, with Governor Baker signing into law the CROWN Act. It bans discrimination against natural and protective black hairstyles, including braids, locks, twists, and bantu knots. And Massachusetts is the 18th state to pass such a law. It includes New Jersey, where lawmakers introduced the act after a black high school wrestler was forced to cut his locks in order to participate in a match. That incident also sparked a national proposal, which is still waiting on Senate action. But standing next to the governor when he put pen to paper yesterday were two women who drove the change here in Massachusetts starting way back in 2017. That's when twin sisters Maya and Deanna Cook got detention and were banned from going to prom and other school activities at their Malden charter school just because of the way they wore their hair. Maya Cook joins me now, along with State Representative Brandy Fluker-Oakley of Boston, one of the bill's co-sponsors. Maya, I want to start with you. How did this feel to see all these efforts turn into law?
It felt amazing to be there yesterday with the governor, Charlie Baker, and see him actually sign the CROWN Act, and now it's a law now. So it just felt really amazing. It was intense, but it was just, I couldn't have asked for anything more.
So you and your sister were really credited not only with your courage for standing up, but for helping be some of the driving force behind what happened. Can you give the details? You're now 21. This was when you were 15 that this incident took place. Can you paint the picture for us of what it was like as a 15-year-old?
Yeah, so my sister and I, we went to get box braids. We had never really done that before, so we were really excited. It was during spring break, so we came back to school and all our friends were excited, and it was just like a happy day. And then the day after that, that's where it all went south. Our history teacher, she gave Deanna an infraction for the braids and sent her down to the nurse's office where they told her she had to take her hair out in 2 days. And then I had the same class right after it happened to Deanna with the same teacher, and she already had the form filled out for me, and she sent me to the nurse too. And I just remember, like, in that moment, going down the stairs, going to the nurse's office, it just didn't feel real. I was like, I'm like missing class time because of my hair. And it was just really upsetting, especially I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. I remember going to the bathroom after talking with the nurse to cry because I just couldn't believe what was happening. It didn't feel right.
And did you have other friends at the time in school who you were able to discuss this with? It was just you and your sister?
So we did have some friends that we were able to talk to about it with, but the other thing is that the administration, they started calling down all the other Black girls to investigate their hair, and because of that, people felt like maybe me and Deanna like told them whose hair was fake or real or whatever, which wasn't true. So we did have some people to talk to it about, but not the support of everyone right away.
Representative, I want to turn to you. You gave a very powerful speech when you introduced this bill. You talked about this as being a real issue, a damaging issue, a pervasive issue, and you have your own experience. Can you tell us your own personal experience with this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that as Black women and other people who have our texture hair, we are socialized very early about our hair. I can remember being a little girl having to sit for hours to get braids or having to get what was then called a pressing curl. Now it's evolved to be a silk press. And there would always be conversations about what was presentable, what was professional. I taught in Baltimore City third grade, and I had went natural a couple years prior to that teaching engagement. And for me, it was just critically important that my students saw a Black woman who shares their cultural background wearing their natural hair. I went on to pursue other professional aspirations, including going to law school down in Atlanta, where the culture there actually was more open to natural hair. graduated, moved back to Boston, was working as a public defender, and it was very clear that natural hair was not something that was well received. And when we think about the optics of the courtroom and how public perception very much does matter in terms of the life and the outcome of what happens with your client, I then had to take painstaking hours to get my hair straightened or to add a weave to my hair, because what folks don't understand is for Black women, sometimes it's the choice of, do I wear my hair straight or to get to work out and go to the gym? And when we think about all of the health disparities in the Black community for those who sweat in their scalp, sometimes wearing the hair straight, it means I can't go to the gym for a week or two, and that also has other implications. So I've had my own stories. There are plenty of stories throughout my family and with my friends, and so this is why the CROWN Act is so important, and why what Maya and Deanna did was so crucial to help to really break the cycle of oppression that so many people with textured hair experience.
You've talked about the commonality among many of the stories is that they are occurring for young people. We have some statistics that we can share that show that young girls are really the subject of a lot of this problem. Experience of hair discrimination by the age of 12, 57%, 66% of Black girls in majority white schools experience hair discrimination and sometimes wish their hair was straight. That is 81% of girls that were surveyed. So this would clearly have an impact on self-esteem. Maya, you were 15 years old. Can you describe what it did for your confidence? You obviously have gone on to have a real impact on this issue. How did you feel at the time?
So the first day that I came back to school, I felt really good. I felt beautiful. I felt more connected to my culture. And then the second day, after I got in trouble for it, I felt embarrassed. I felt shame. I just felt like dirty. I felt like just very embarrassed and just awful. I didn't feel the same way I did the first day.
And Representative, do you think that this law will have the same impact in schools? There can no longer be overt discrimination, but a lot of this is really about implicit bias, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We can't legislate a bias to go away, because we're all humans who have our own lived experiences that impact how we show up. And so often, what makes bias very pervasive is that it's unconscious. So for so many of us, we don't even realize we're acting in biased ways for or against something, because it's so hardwired into our cognitive system and our beliefs. What I do think this legislation does, and in a very, very powerful way, is puts folks on notice that we're actually not going to tolerate overt discrimination. And when we look at how this bill was framed in Massachusetts, it also joins it with other discriminatory acts. So in the same way that someone might be facing employment discrimination around a particular set of circumstances, also if they have natural hair, there could be some protection there as well. And I think it just really gives folks who might be experiencing discrimination in school settings or professional settings or other public settings the ammunition and the power to fight back as necessary.
So, but historically, the lack of protection for hair choices, hair discrimination, it's due to a lack of understanding about how a person's hair choices are connected to their race and to their origin. Do you think this moves the needle in other ways in deepening understanding beyond hair?
I think it helps to move the needle, but there's certainly so much to be done. As a former public educator myself, it sickens me to my stomach that there are educators here in the Commonwealth who would penalize young Black and brown girls and boys because of the natural texture of their hair and their cultural styles that they decide to wear. And it signals a very need for a larger conversation. How are we selecting those that we place into power, not just in our public school systems, but across organizations and agencies in the Commonwealth? How are we ensuring that people are educated? I know that there's a bill. Our session ends on Sunday, so I doubt it's moving in the next 4 days, but there is a bill to ensure that people who enter our public school systems are actually educated about the history of Black people. I can remember being a 6C at Boston Latin School, and a classmate of mine in homeroom would every 2 days come with her hair wet, even in the wintertime. And I said, Megan, why do you always have your hair wet? And she said, oh, I have to wash my hair every 2 days. I said, really? I wear a shower cap and I wash my hair every 2 weeks because her hair is more oily, my hair is more dry. And so they have different needs. And it's because of that experience and my natural curiosity, I learned that about Megan and her hair type. But outside of that, I wouldn't have known. So there is some more intentional education across all sectors that needs to happen in our public schools and our public agencies, in corporations, and nonprofits across the Commonwealth.
Maya, do you think that should be happening at a very early age in schools? This implicit bias training, other conversations?
Yeah, I think that should be happening like even when a kid goes to preschool, because that's where they could experience the racism. So yeah, so I think the training should be happening right early on.
But Representative, we're at a point where a lot of discussion about bias and bringing anything into schools is being weaponized. Basically, when we look about when we look at what's been happening with critical race theory, things like that. Do you think that something like working on bias, what's behind these issues, is really possible at this moment in schools?
I think it's possible and it's been happening. I had the privilege of taking an elective in high school called Facing History in Ourselves. And that's where I learned about so many different cultures, different systemic oppression that occurred throughout the world and certainly within the US. And it's funded by folks who culturally and racially identify as Jewish. So, of course, there's a big segment on the Holocaust and all the oppression that was experienced there, and for all the marginalized groups beyond Jews that were brutally terrorized by the Nazis. And so I think we've seen pockets of it throughout history. Certainly, there have been organizations that have been educating their own youth about their culture and what it means to own it and to walk into it. And so I think it's possible. It's just about having public courage and the will in order to make these policies actually enacted.
Maya, how do you think you found your particular courage? How did you get involved in the progression that now is law?
So I just found my courage within myself because I knew I wasn't gonna stand for what was happening. And it also helped having my sister there too. We both knew that we weren't gonna accept the treatment that we were getting from our school administration.
And so are you planning to follow along with this? There are obviously other states that are where this is in some form of action. And right now at the federal level, that some people are describing that as an uphill battle in the Senate. Maya, are you planning to continue on this?
Yes, me and my sister, we will not stop until it is federal law.
Okay. Representative, do you have any sense of why at the federal level it may be an uphill climb?
I think we've seen in recent years that at the federal level, there seems to be a lot of contention that's happening. Certainly, I don't serve federally, so I can't speak firsthand, but I just think this is just another example of how even things that seem like common sense become so isolated and feels hyper partisan that we're not able to move forward. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do the right thing.
Now, we've basically been talking, we are all women talking about this issue, but this is an issue that affects men. Representative, you have a particular story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law. So for as long as I've known him, he's had very long dreadlocks. Owns his own IT company. He is a returning citizen from incarceration. Has a very successful IT company, and he was going out for a contract. He won the bid. The private company really liked him, and they said, "But we'll only hire you if you cut off your locks." And so to recognize the financial implication, in addition to the social and emotional toil that it puts on folks who have Black textured hair, he made a decision for himself. You know what? I'm not going to take the job because he had other prospects. But the truth of the matter is, people who don't have our textured hair never ask to make that choice. And that's why this is so problematic, because it has huge economic implications as well.
And Maya, last question to you. Are you able to say how this experience has shaped you?
Yes, so this experience has definitely shaped me to always be confident and use my voice. You know, back in high school, early on, I wasn't always the most confident girl. I was shy, but now I always stand up for myself no matter what because of this experience.
Well, you are certainly a role model. I want to thank you both for joining me on this very important topic. Maya Cook and Representative Brandy Fluker Oakley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.